My name is Taiwo Adeyemi. I'm curator of Losing Daylight, the exhibition. At the core of it, at the core of Losing Daylight is to establish the longevity of film in Nigeria. If you ask 10 filmmakers how old they think film is in Nigeria, no answer will get you close to 100 years. No answer. And it's because we kind of reduce film in Nigeria to Nollywood. We reduce it to the golden age. We reduce it to, at best, Ogunde. And while these things are important and while they play their own part, film in Nigeria is 123 years old. That's how old it is. The first time a film was shown in Nigeria was 123 years ago. It's a simple piece of history that we can't afford to forget. Now, we can go around postulating about who were the exhibitors of these films. Were they the colonial masters? We can do that. But the point is that our forefathers watched film. The same time, a white man in Spain was watching film for the first time. When Thomas Edison invented the kinetoscope in the 19th century, Nigeria was one of the viewing parlors that I sent that into. It's important to know this because when we read our facts like Nollywood is the second largest film in the world, all these glossy statistics, it doesn't really do anything that I consider valuable more than understanding how long it has been happening. It will also give you context as to if you watch a film today and you have comments or you have criticisms about the film, you can contextualize it if you understand where it's coming from. If you understand when Nigerians were able to practice as filmmakers. If you understand how racist the first films in Nigeria were. So if you understand all of these things, I think that it will also help you better review, criticize, comment on the film that we currently see today, right? So it's just it's a context thing for me. I really want context, I just really want context. I can't imagine, Nigerians do writer's room, right? And if you sit in the writer's room, the idea is for you to exchange ideas. Imagine a writer's room in a museum where you can easily walk up to a shelf. Instead of arguing, there are so many misinformation, assumptions that we're using to fill in the gap because we just don't know, and I don't blame anybody really, we just don't know the history. So we can use our passion and our, the pain to make assumptions and fill in the gap about what happened when. But the truth is that we don't know. And we're trying to learn. We're trying to present our findings to the public. And if filmmakers today can have understanding of that history, imagine the stories we'll tell. Investors don't have context because in the 2000s, there were already box office records, right? In the 1980s or the 1970s, there were already originals. NTA was commissioning producers to make film. That's what originals are. We just didn't call them that because we didn't understand the language. So the streamers today are just like advancing on that. There's nothing new. But if you understand this history, if you understand all of these different details, you properly contextualize the industry as a whole. And it's important to me because how can we grow as an industry without understanding context of where it's coming from? So I think that our potential as an industry will be reaching its highest peak if we can properly document the history and give filmmakers context and build a repository of what has been and what is to come. And we are taking it one day at a time because it's a very long journey. It's an institution that we continue to collect, preserve, restore, and showcase the history of film in Nigeria in tangible objects. Physical items that people can actually see and touch and interact with. And my grandmother was a film collector herself, so this started from me watching her preserve until she couldn't preserve again, right? So the point is that everybody destroying whatever they have today, it's not because they don't want to preserve, it's that they don't know how. Losing Daylight is answering the how. We're figuring how to digitize content from back in the day to preserve them in well-protected, climate-controlled environment that is accessible to everybody. We're finding ways to simplify history because history can be very complicated and boring. We're trying to simplify it in a very in a very bite-sized way that this generation can easily consume. So that's the phase, and eventually we think that it's important to find a home for all these exhibits. So it's a long journey. We are building a permanent exhibit. This is just a temporary one, and yeah, that's about it. Film in Nigeria started in the 19th century, colonial Nigeria, as a tool of enlightenment and education by the colonial masters. So there was an equipment where people had to queue to peep, right, in a hole to experience film, moving picture at the time. And that's how film started in Nigeria. And then it continued, it morphed into the golden age when we finally got our independence, and Nigerian filmmakers found more space to perform. And then that was in the 1960s to the 1980s. And then in the 1980s, there was a home video boom. That was the first time that people could stay in their house and watch film. Before then, you had to go to theaters, or you had to go and see Ogunde in his boss performing. But like, home video kind of changed everything. The technology was basically recording film on like a reel, and they were pioneers in that regard. Living in Bondage was one of those, not the first, but it was one of the biggest ones at the time. And then that also morphed into what we now know today as the new Nigerian cinema. Today we have streaming, we have digital, we have cinema halls, we have all of that. So this 4 different era of film has been very, very instrumental to what Nollywood is today, because Nollywood as a concept, right, did not have a name until 2002, right? So we have to give people like a backstory before that 2002 happened. So yeah, that's a brief history of film in Nigeria. We are building an institution that will cater to the preservation of film in Nigeria. It's really that simple. We are registered as a not-for-profit, and we are trying to recapture history and simplifying it for a new generation. So the exhibition is just a tool, and we will use other tools, right, to do the same thing. And December is a bigger scale event, and that will incorporate panel conversations, era to era. We'll have generational filmmakers and new school filmmakers to exchange notes. Basically, there will be film screenings, there will be fashion shows, film fashion shows. There will be a number of exciting activities that will just put Nollywood like as a spectacle around the world. And we're happy that EcoBank is helping us achieve that, because the December event is happening at the EcoBank Pan-African Center from the 10th to 15th of December. That's a bigger scale event, and we hope that the proof of concept that we've tried to do with this pop-up gives us a reason to do even more. There are other plans. We're building a conservation lab. We're trying to, because a lot of the things we are collecting are in terrible condition, and we have to restore them. And the people that restore these things are absolute professionals who are very, very expensive, and we have to fly people in, we have to travel sometimes to digitize a lot of VHS tapes, as you can see. We are digitizing them. We are creating a big register for forgotten films. We are doing a lot of things in tech, and the plan is that for every project, for every expression, we are speaking to the same truth of recapturing film history. We are speaking to the same truth, but there will be so many expressions. And at the end of the day, we hope that all the exhibits and all the items we've collected over the years can find a home, hopefully in what will be the first film museum in Nigeria. And I think that that's the journey we're on, and I hope that with support, because we need a lot of support. It's a very expensive project, expensive in cash and in kind, because we are collecting objects from families that kind of that are attached to the history of their forefathers who made film. So we can't throw money at them. They need to believe in it, right? So we need a lot of support from families, from individual filmmakers, from institutional support, the government, everybody really. And if you support us, we will go far.